That's his line. Good evening. Welcome to the Minnetonka School Board Study Session for January 20. Time for citizen input. Do we have anyone here who wishes to give citizen input today? No one has signed up. All right. So we will move on to the first item on our agenda, which is middle school elective course proposals. Superintendent Law.
Chair Leo Halloran, members of the board. The school board set a goal to study our middle school programming since it had not been updated since 2007. That was a board goal actually for the 2023-24 school year. In February of 2024, this board approved implementation of a new proposed middle school program. The implementation was delayed just because of a short window of time to get everything on board. We are still moving forward with that, working with our teachers to iron out a few details. We're optimistic that implementation can happen in 2025, although we have not finalized that decision. Tonight, we are going to hear proposed elective course proposals. One of the wins of this new program was increased opportunities for students to start to explore potential high school coursework or areas of interest. Dr. Amy Ledoux, Associate Superintendent, along with our middle school principals, Pete Dimmitt and Freya Schurmacher, are going to summarize the proposed course proposals, and I'll let them give you the details on how they came to these courses. Dr. Ledoux.
Thank you, Superintendent Law, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to share with you the middle school elective course proposals. Each year, as you know, we come to you in the fall, typically in November, with course improvements, and we ask you to approve those in December. But on occasions when we've been working on special programs like Tonka Online, some of our momentum programs at the high school, and now middle school, we've come to you at a different time of the year and asked for you to look at those courses and to provide your approval. So tonight, we're here for that purpose. So, as Superintendent Law mentioned, we spent a great deal of time over the last year and a half working on development of middle school program proposal. And as a part of that, we have worked on identifying new elective opportunities for our students. We began working with teachers during the spring of 2024 to identify or to generate ideas. And the focus for that idea generation was really in both providing student choice as well as preparing students for the types of opportunities they would have at the high school and helping them identify what are their strengths, what are those interests that they have to help make some of those choice selections as they move into the high school level. From that, we had 87 course proposals initially. So there was a large list that was generated by our teachers. Those were further refined. We really looked at those. We looked for similarities. They were combined or clustered, and then they were given back to teachers to do further consolidation. From that, we had a consolidated list of 44 courses that came forward. After we received those 44 proposals, we asked teachers to generate descriptions, and those descriptions were used to then survey stakeholders. And so this past fall, our students in grades 5 through 7 and their families of those 5th through 7th graders were provided an opportunity to complete a survey. The survey included the descriptions. They were asked to rate each course on a 3-point scale, 1 being not of interest, 3 being high interest, as well as they were asked to provide what would be the top 5 offerings they would like to see either for themselves or for their child. That data was combined with some data that we gathered from our students who serve on the high school district Student Teaching and Learning Advisory. That group was asked to give the top 5 choices they wished they'd had an opportunity to take or that they thought would have helped them prepare. And it was very interesting because really the courses that they identified crossed over between the ones the students identified and the ones the families identified. You know, it's interesting when you have a 10th grade boy say, you know, I wish I had taken speech. I didn't know how much I was going to have to present and talk in front of my class in high school. And so, I mean, that's pretty insightful and pretty mature at that point. So we really added that perspective as well. From there, all of that data was evaluated, and that is what resulted in the list of courses that we're going to be sharing with you tonight. In addition to that process, we also brought these course proposals to the district Teaching and Learning Advisory earlier this month and just ran through a synopsis or a quick overview of each course and gave an opportunity for feedback and questions. And we received some good insights from that as well. So the courses that are being proposed are really in banks. The first one is general electives, and this covers many of the typical areas we currently have electives in, as well as this is the first time really that we've seen offerings in core content areas of English, language arts, social studies, and science. And there were 16 courses that were identified and developed, and you received the descriptions of these in your board packet. Additionally, we had one art course proposed, and while that seems shallow, it's because currently there are several art elective courses that are already offered and that will continue to be offered. Additionally, we have required art and music courses that all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders currently engage in. You may have noticed on the general list, and I could have highlighted that while I was there, there are a couple of courses that, depending on the teacher and the final design, that could also meet a fine arts requirement. Things like fashion design and construction or web design are 2 of those courses that have that potential, provided they meet the art standards within that course. Additionally, this is the first time that we will have immersion electives. Currently, we do have an immersion flavored course that is a part of the 7th grade wheel that, as of now, continues to be there. But this is the first time that we will have some targeted opportunities both in Chinese and in Spanish, as well as a workshop opportunity for immersion students. And then we have 3 physical education proposals as well. Currently, we have 1 elective that has run mainly at East, and then, of course, we have the required physical education courses that our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders take. So as we continue to move forward, tonight's review is one of our next steps. We would then be coming to you to ask for approval of these courses as a part of the February board meeting. And then courses, once approved, can be added to the registration guide. Following registration, we determine which courses will actually run based on how students register. And then finally, the courses that would run from these updated opportunities are the ones that would be staffed and that teachers would then design and finalize curriculum for. So with that, we would be happy to answer any questions about these proposals or the process.
Does anyone have a question? Mr. Vitale.
More of a comment. Thank you for the report and bringing these to us. It's really exciting to see, and Superintendent Law talked about it. Be a byproduct of the new schedule is us being able, or well, yes, it is us, but being able to even offer these, and so hoping that we can continue to get that worked out, and love all the variety. Even the financial literacy, we can in this world, and really any world, you can't start that early enough, and see a lot of potential career paths and a lot of hooks into the high school programming, so it's just, really good work. Thank you.
Thank you. The financial literacy was the most popular choice by parents.
Not so much.
Although the high school students thought it was valuable.
Megan?
Mine's not a question as much as just a comment. One of the things I thought was really interesting is that teaching and learning, one of the questions that was asked, and you can correct me, I think it was a teacher, was there are similar courses to these at the high school, and how will that articulate in terms of, like, is it going to replace those courses? And there was a little discussion around that the teachers at the middle school and at the high school would work together so that it would be, you could take both and it wouldn't just be the same class over again. So I thought that was an important point, that there will be communication, and just because you take it in middle school doesn't mean you can't take the parallel course when you get to high school. And then I was just also going to share that my current seventh grader was like, hey, which of those electives are going to be offered next year? Because he remembered taking the survey. And so I was like, I will let you know when we do. But, so I just thought that was kind of cool, that meant that there was interest from the kids around what they're going to be seeing, so.
When you
Yes,
think
come
of it, like, for example, we currently have a drawing and painting class. And obviously, the high school has a drawing class and they have a painting class. It's just, at such a different level, it's almost like, the foundational skills that you really figure out what you want to do at the
And it can maybe trigger an interest. Like if you take it in middle school and you're like, oh, that was cool, I want to learn more about it, then you can continue it in high school. So it's kind of like a little taste test.
And Andrea Hoffman also shared at that meeting that several of the teachers were in communication with high school teachers on the front side, or have been over the last couple of years, where high school teachers were encouraging them to help provide some initial experiences for kids in these areas.
What was the most popular for the students? I know financial literacy was for the parents.
Do you want me to say some?
Yeah.
So some of the popular ones for students, animal behavior was a popular one. Fashion design and construction. Forensics, outdoor learning was a really big one for both families and students.
There was a lot of overlap
Yeah.
in the top 5 between students and parents, which was encouraging. The notable exception was financial literacy. But other than that, there's quite a bit of similarity between what parents wanted and what kids wanted, which was nice to see.
Any other questions or comments? I'll just add, thanks for this work. The middle school program review has been a priority for this board for a couple of years now, and it's good to see coming to fruition and freshening up some of the registration options. And Superintendent Law, does this timing work for us? If they come back in February, we approve, will they be offering these then for next year?
Yeah, we've kind of sketched out a timeline, working backwards from spring break. Our goal is always to be able to let our teachers know what their reality is before they leave for spring break. And so it will be tight, but this timeline should allow us to get everything into the registration catalog, get it in front of the kids, and kind of figure out the staffing based on what electives the kids sign up, and be able to hit all those deadlines.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the Facilities Task Force. Superintendent Law.
Chair Lou Heller and members of the board, members of the community who are watching tonight or at some point in time, some of the biggest work that we're working on is facilities study and what would suggestions from the community look like. And so tonight, and I'll just give a little trailer, many of our next board meetings will include this topic. We will continue to be refining and gathering input on proposals to a facility task force. What we're talking about does not guarantee that there'll be a question on the ballot in November, but what we're talking about is a share back to the community about what physically our community task force recommended, so we can start gathering input from all members of the community and put together something that might meet the needs the community was looking for. Tonight, Executive Director of Finance and Operations is going to be showing you the pictures and prices, is what I call this presentation. What do the buildings look like and what do they cost if we were to listen to the recommendations of the Community Task Force and start to build them? So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bourgeois and his current blue screen, but I think eventually there'll be pictures and.
Well, so I was connected, disconnected. I'm connected, but it's not.
Maybe if you disconnect.
Let me
from
just
your- or,
get,
sorry.
let me just get out of this.
Yeah, and then let's restart again.
Oh, there we go, okay. All right,
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
One more comment, we will post this presentation and an opportunity for feedback on the Facilities Task Force page.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Law and members of the board. You're actually doing something that was last done 29 years ago, where the school board at that time, in 1995, actually almost 30 years ago, in 1995, was considering a building bond referendum that they ran on April 23rd of 1996. And that's the last, it was approved 51.5% yes to 48.5% no. That's the last building bond referendum that this district has run. So, of course, you put together the Facilities Study Task Force and asked them to make some recommendations, which they have. So they put together their list, and they actually checked it twice at 2 meetings and presented it to you. So next steps is, okay, well, how do you take that list and put it into something that is, semi-tangible at least? And so this is trying to look at, okay, what were the recommendations? How would they tie into a building? Where on a building they could go? How much would it cost? And all those types of things. So, the recommendations are at a 30,000-foot level. And if you consider you get to the point where you're actually building it, that's down at the, 1,000-foot level. These are kind of concepts at the 15 or 16,000-foot level. So I'll just continue on here. All right, so we got our series of projects. Again, I kind of covered that first slide. So this additional information also is provided with this presentation about the tax impact for the approximately 13,000 tax-paying residents of the district, or tax-paying parcels of residents of the district. That's included at the end. So our next steps, again, how things fit on our sites, location, also, if you're going to build them, how are you going to build them? How are you going to do something? Can you put it in a location where the construction will minimize the impact on the operation of the school? Because these projects will take more than just the summer to build. So they'll be going on while school's in session. So I just put in here, not working in a vacuum with the real world. We're looking at this as a consideration. Costs have been going up. For example, the elementary physical education gyms that cost about $3 million in 2017 and 2018. Actually, we have similar gymnasiums in this, and they're double, because of construction inflation. We're working on enacting the second consecutive year of budget reductions without legislative success in terms of getting some help. And at some point in time in the future, our district residents will be asked hopefully to provide additional resources for maintaining educational programs. But they're not immune to the effect of the 2020s in terms of accelerated and continuing inflation on their personal finances. So in kind of like putting all these together, we're trying to put together a package that is a recommendation that's reasonable and respectful to the residents who are being asked to pay for them. It's your district, it's their district. Our first cut solutions that took the whole list and estimated them all out were $193 million. And that would have impacted the 500,000 median home at about $13.82 per month. And that basically would fall into the 49% support level per the Morris-Leverman survey from June 2024. So, Peter Leatherman, he told us in the presentation and also in meetings that You need to start out with support of over 60%, a level of over 60% out the gate, to be able to end up with an actual vote above 50% after the community debates the proposal. And then financing that would have been really challenging, and it would have resulted in trying to limit the tax impact as best as possible, but a significantly larger impact, and then having steadily increasing payments, because we'd had to use something called capital appreciation bonds to actually just kind of make things work, but push off some of the payments further out, and but they would be increasing, and that would make it difficult if we were going to be looking at having to do an operating referendum if our taxes are going up related to these facilities. So we look for some other options. And option B is kind of like Rome wasn't built in a day. It has all facility task force projects recommended, that were recommended for consideration accounted for. But we look at utilizing all district facility resources over time. For instance, a few years back, we actually were able to utilize excess or fund balance that had built up in the community education fund to build an addition onto the community education fund. So they're actually in a very favorable position. Again, that might be a resource that we can use to handle the community education fund and not ask taxpayers to pay for. So we looked at focus on the 912 campuses for this kind of option B. There's no changes to the elementary schools in terms of what was recommended. At the middle schools, it's all the solutions but a second cut at the solutions, the same thing at the high school. And other projects, we recommended some for future action as additional needs or funding sources becomes available, but this is just one way. Ultimately, the UO will be deciding all, some, or none, and so you're the admirals of the district and have to make that decision. And I'm a good Marine. Whatever you say to go, I'll be aye, and we'll do it. But it's a big decision. So trying to get you the best information we possibly can. So we'll start at Clear Springs, and I go back, and I'm not going to read through them all, but the task force items, increased restrooms, larger special education space, and small group spaces at Clear Springs were on the list. Some of the things that we had to consider are on the right. It's the same way for each one of the schools. Where's the plumbing, for additional staff restrooms, for instance? There's limited options for additional location. It's a tight site. How do we get at the site for construction? How things would impact the school, staging of materials, and stormwater retention pond requirements and the location for that. And so we've taken all that into account, and we came up with a recommended solution that basically shows in addition out the southeast side, or actually, sorry, that's the northeast side. This is a little bit off of north, or true north, where we would provide additional motor room space and small group rooms, and then additional staff restrooms right in the back corner, which is actually very close to a water supply. So it all would fit. We'd be able to basically come in the back off this cul-de-sac like we did for this gym addition back here. We'd be able to stage off in the corner and have construction kind of isolated off on the side while activities kind of went on, utilizing the playground and everything else during construction, and staying away from driving through the front. So that's a method of how. The other thing is, before I forget, there's about 140,000 square feet of additional space in these recommendations, and there is about 50,000 square feet of renovation or repurposed. So it's pretty significant. That's about 200,000 square feet. And just for reference, it's in the process of building the district for open enrollment and all that, we've added about 370,000 square feet over 15 years. So this would be a big chunk like that, in a more compressed amount of time. So this is just kind of zooming in a little bit tighter. And again, you can see 2,800 first floor remodel and a 3,000 square foot addition. Zooming in a little closer, so get our drone zipping in here. It's ATS&R has this habit of putting stars to easily identify main entrances are in blue, and secondary entrances are in white. So, but, it's a really good plan too, though, so it earned a star. No, I'm just, so here's the cost of that. Restrooms, $268,000. The special education motor classroom and the adjustments to make access to it, about $2.3 million. And then small group spaces, $749,000. So $3.3 million is the estimate provided by ATS&R, and that's based on an average of all these projects going out to bid in March of 2027. Some would go out sooner, some would go out later, because we have to space it out to make it affordable in terms of a bond issue and easier on the taxpayers. We actually space out construction over basically summer of, in theory, summer of 26, 27, 28, and then a little bit in summer of 29. I mean, well, ending in summer of 29. Deep Haven Elementary School, the task force items were gymnasium, small group spaces, and staff restrooms.
Would you prefer to do questions by building or have people take notes and come back at the end?
I think we can take them as we go if people have them, and then we probably will have more questions at the end as well. I think
Sure.
we've got time on the agenda for.
Just
cover it.
for board members who might have questions.
Sure.
So any questions about what we heard so far while we're stopped? You answered my one question, which was about the timing of the estimates, so I appreciate that.
At Deep Haven Elementary School, gymnasium, small group spaces, and staff restrooms. And the site impacts, a lot of things were considered. The real tricky thing here is the stormwater retention pond requirements and the location of it, because the lower level is, and then the associated playground location. The lower level down in this, it doesn't show up. The lower level down here is actually an infilled wetland, which we can't do anymore, but it was done a long time ago. But you can't put any underground stormwater retention ponds there. And the reason we've always done underground is because we have such tight spaces, and rather than build a big hole in the ground and have it fill up with water, we like to put them underground so we can still do things on top of it, like playgrounds or parking. But so the solution to add a gymnasium and basically the similar size gymnasium, actually exact same size gymnasium to what we've built at for the five other elementary schools, the exception being Excelsior, where we put a gym and cafeteria into the kind of the center of the building. But this is the only school that has not received an additional gymnasium. So they're really tight on assembly space and tight on phy-ed space. This kind of helps free up their cafeteria also for a few more hours to be able to stretch out their lunch if they need to. But it made sense to actually put the gym on the existing playground. So then the question is like, well, what do you do with the existing playground? Well, the proposal or the solution is you push it out and build a large retaining wall. So if you think of kind of the retaining wall like we have at Einer Anderson, build a large retaining wall like that and push that playground out there. And then that gives us the space to put the playground or the gymnasium in a good position relative to community use also, but on the south end, and we know that we can put underground stormwater underneath here. Add additional small group rooms on the hallway that connects the gym to the building. And then there's actually a couple of, because we have these small group classrooms, it would be possible to actually do a restoration of some small groups classrooms in that space if needed, or it could still be left the way it is. There's two like half-size classrooms. But that's the concept, and that's how we squeeze it onto the site. Again, kind of just zeroing in a little bit tighter. And so the gymnasium addition is 11,600 square feet. And you can see how we have specialist rooms and staff restrooms, but the staff restrooms also can function as restrooms for gymnasium use when on weekends and evenings. So the cost here, $268,000 for staff restrooms, about $11.9 million, almost $12 million for that gymnasium and the connection to it, and the playground removal and the retaining wall. So that's why it says gymnasium, but it's all that to make it possible to put it on that site. And so you're looking at a total of about $13.155 million. 12,700 square feet total of new construction, and 11,000 square feet of heavy renovation.
Do we have any updates on the secondary auto queue that we were trying to get installed at Deep Haven? Any progress there, or?
Well, we haven't done anything with that because the cost kept escalating because of the stormwater requirements, because that is going to have to be drained farther down. At the end of this presentation, we do have about it's up to about $3 million, but we do have $3 million in here for that secondary auto queue.
Okay.
So at Excelsior Elementary School, staff restrooms, were another popular item on the upper floors. And a second music room, larger nursery spaces and small group spaces. And then lobby reconfiguration. The real rationale for actually recreating the lobby or pushing the lobby out is it basically provides the space to convert the existing offices into small group rooms. So you push that out, and then put a second music room. That basically, all of our schools basically have more than one music room, except for, well, Excelsior does also, but they're using a classroom for it that had originally been built as a kindergarten room. So that would recapture that space, so to speak. And then in this situation, again, we're proposing to put restrooms near plumbing, and there's limited options for an addition on this site also. It's very tight. And site access is going to be interesting. I think for any construction that we do, we'd have to get it, and it wouldn't be much of a problem, I don't think. But we'd have to get an easement to use kind of a little bit of staging on the right-of-way of Highway 7 possibly. Although worst case, you can always stage on the back lot, parking lot, and they just have to haul their materials a long way. I've done construction projects like that where they needed to store further, stage further away. In this situation, in addition, would require a stormwater retention pond, but we'd be able to plop that down right underneath the front parking lot. And so in that situation also, those are the kinds of things where during construction, you stage or you plan for that stuff to be done while school's not in session. So there's different things you do at different times. So again, right out the front, you can see we're stacking restrooms above existing staff restrooms. So kind of zooming in a little bit closer, just to kind of give you the lay of the land with the overall item. This particular, oops, sorry, I forgot my pointer's not on here. That is the classroom that was built to be an additional kindergarten room a few years ago, but it became and I guess enrollment has dropped, but it became a music room. So as you can see with this, and I'll zoom in a little closer, whoops. We push, so this is currently the administration right in here. And the nursing area, principal's offices, assistant principal's office, there's a conference room. But all this would be converted into small group spaces. Move the principal and assistant principal out, move the nurses out, and then put a second music room here next to the other music room too. So it's off kind of in an area where if you're, if you got the band going at full steam, it doesn't necessarily travel down the hallway quite so far. So my dad was a music teacher for 42 years, and his band room was way off in the back of the building behind the gyms. So.
I have a question about the restrooms on the second and third part of the tower there. Am I correct in my assumption that that is probably reclaiming that bump out space that's on the second and third floor corner classrooms?
We're going to try to reconfigure, but we may have to grab a little bit of space.
Because they have sinks and things in those corner classrooms.
Yeah.
It's
and so we're going to have to push those in a few feet.
Okay.
The thing about a single stall, single use room like that is it doesn't have to be super big. But you're correct, that's what we have to do.
Okay, thanks.
So 3,400 square feet addition and a 2,100 square feet of remodel. So the costs here, the staff restrooms actually are going to be $173,000 per the estimate. The nurse principal reception area, which basically moves that out, and then the small, 2.3 million, and the small group space is about $800,000 of renovation. And then the music room would be about 1.6, so it'll be about 4.78 million. So we'll keep going. Groveland, the staff restrooms again, they'd like a second music room also. They have a second music room, but it's a small space that we actually made out of a former gymnasium storage area. So, and small group spaces. And they did ask to do some things, there was discussion about circulation and all that kind of stuff. So this also kind of ties into that. Very similar situations. In this situation, though, at Groveland, the bus corral has already been downsized with the various additions we did out the back of the building over time. So it's pretty tight in there to get all the buses in. So we're trying to do whatever we can to not impact the bus corral and push it out further. Also trying to maintain the playground areas, because if we start pushing the bus corral out, we got to rebuild the playground. But also, that playground has been downsized a few times for additions and moving the east parking lot back. So we try to squeeze it on there as tightly as possible. So this kind of gives you an overall view of the campus, and it shows the main addition area, one single area for most of the main construction, and some renovation area on the the northwest elbow crook of the west wing. So we look at a music room, and this music room has to be built to tornado shelter standards, but it's not nearly the cost of a tornado shelter at the Vantage Momentum building. But so that would have reinforced concrete and all that kind of stuff to make it impervious to an F5 tornado. It's interesting because the code is so unique. You have to do it for the capacity of the addition, but not for the rest of the school. So, but and the reason we actually have to do that is what we're doing in this situation is, I'll zoom in a little closer, we are basically converting 2 existing classrooms into small group rooms and providing a connection through. So we're pushing the classrooms where students are in all day out to the outside so they have light, natural light. And then we're also adding this additional hallway. So this would kind of give almost like an internal roundabout circulation between the 2 hallways, but also would free up a little bit of the functional or the congestion space when they're actually having lunch, going through the lunch lines and stuff. So we add that hallway to the outside, but that hallway is designed to have glass all the way across so that you still have the bar of light right through into the classrooms that currently have outdoor exposure. Because it is important to provide daylight. There's been long time ago in fact I still have it somewhere, but I had a study where they measured the progress of students in Portland, Oregon, where it was a lot of rain, Southern California, where it was sunny all the time, and in Florida, where it was variable, and the impact of natural light. And it didn't, in students in classrooms with daylight and students that did not. And the students in the classrooms with daylight progressed faster, no matter if it was in cloudy, sunny, or variable. So it is an important thing. I always say that we were always living in caves, but we could always see out. We want to live on the inside, but we want to see the outside. It's just ingrained in our DNA. So at Groveland Elementary, we'd have the staff restrooms. And actually, just backing up with this, so there's an additional restroom that's in the inside of the tornado shelter because you have to provide a restroom there. So even though it's a music room, it's like really going to be, it's designed so that it could be a 3rd staff restroom. And small group spaces, the conversion would be about $1 million, and the music room with the tornado shelter, and that includes the classrooms, the new classrooms, and the hallway and stuff. So it's about a $4 million addition of 5,400 square feet and 2,800 of heavy renovation. So at Minnetonka.
Well, any questions
sorry.
on the Groveland? Okay, thanks.
I think I remember to pause. So at Minnetonka, staff restrooms, replace the media center and small group spaces. And the media center at Minnewash is about 2,900 square feet, and it's less than half than the other elementary school media centers. So the idea there is looking at putting a media center attaching it onto the building, and then repurposing that media center space into small group rooms. So, we have the bus corral right next in the parking, and that works well. Their site circulation works well. It's a tight site. We don't have much space to the east. So if we're going to do an addition, it'd be looking at adding on out the north. So this is kind of the high-level view of the site, where we look at a media center on the north end. And staff restrooms, actually they have staff restrooms kind of down on this end and in the middle, so we had staff restrooms on the north end. And then repurposing the existing media center in a small group. So kind of zooming in a little bit closer, just getting a little tighter in, where you can see where all that is kind of on a global standpoint. So what we would be doing is pushing out the back. We'd actually still leave enough space for that little T-ball baseball field to stay back there. But we're also pushing the building away a little bit to make sure that the music room still has some natural light. And it's just another exit for, fire escape and all that type of stuff too. There's enough space in there that you could actually even add a small group room for activities in the media center. And that media center is actually the Groveland footprint. So they'd get it, if you're familiar with the Groveland Media Center, that's it. We don't have the curve on the end, but that's the square footage that the Groveland Media Center is. So just a little bit tighter look at these areas. And so that would make a big difference to them, because they could really do some of the other activities that all the other schools are doing in their media center that they're really not able to do because it's so tight. Mm-hmm.
What is the white little room areas by that star?
Oh, that's actually not rooms. That is the handicapped access ramp out the back of the building.
Oh, okay.
For a person who's in a wheelchair, you have to, you go out, you make a left turn, you have to go down and then come back. So it's a little
Okay.
zigzag down.
Thank you.
Because there's about a 4-foot drop from the back door to the playground. And you need that long of a ramp to make it, wheelchair accessible. So, $276,000 for 2 staff restrooms, small group spaces of about $600,000 in renovation, and then the media center, which is a big addition, about 4.8, almost 4.9 million, so 5.7 at Minnetonka. So last elementary school, Scenic Heights, increased staff restrooms and small group spaces. It's interesting, but the least amount of requests were at Clear Springs and at Scenic Heights, but they just felt their buildings had what they needed otherwise. And so, but that's what we want. We want people to tell us, what do you need? What do you feel like you're short? So, in this situation, it's an interesting site, and we actually propose going out the back. This actually is sited such that if we ever needed to do something else, or if the Chinese program exploded or something like that, we would still be able to add another addition along the back, make another courtyard around that white star, and connect it across to the other hallway. But we have a music room addition on here. There's a cafeteria addition still shown on this. We don't have that priced in, but we can. We think if we do, we can get that probably out of just out of the contingency fund. It's not a very big one. They have a very tight cafeteria. But the other thing is they asked they would like they more small group spaces, but the way we get small group spaces is to actually take this music room, which was it's the converted backside of what used to be the stage in the original gymnasium. This is the original gymnasium, and it had a stage back there, and that was the backside of the stage. We actually excavated out the stage as the backside, because the stage had been walled off many years ago. And we converted that into a relatively small music room, but we converted it into a second music room. But the idea is we would push this out the back next to the other music room, which is out the back on the southwest corner, and have a similar size, 2 equal size music rooms. And then we would grab, in all these, we would try to get at least 6 small group rooms for the elementaries. But we have, so 2 there, and we'd convert this room into 4 small group rooms off the hallway, kind of very similar to what we have right here. And then you can see we have a space for cafeteria. That would give them 5 more tables, 5 more tables of 12, which is a big increase in capacity. So anyway, that's what it looks like up close. And so in the process, again, $258,000 for the restrooms, small group at $839,000, and the replacement music room for about 1.9, so a little over $3 million.
So just a note, I noticed on the intro slide for Scenic Heights, there are only 2 items bulleted under task force items. So the cafeteria addition and music room were not listed there. Might just be a clarification.
Oh, the reason the music room wasn't listed there is because what we did is, rather than add a bunch of small group rooms and have them all out the back, we thought it was advantageous to have the small music rooms or small group rooms in the middle. So to do that, we put the music room out the back with the other music room. Because this music room is kind of in the middle of this whole educational area. And so we took the noisy activity, moved it out, and then converted it to small group.
So it's not new construction?
It's new construction, but it's replacing an existing
It's just a
music room, so it's not like a
It's just a
new
swap.
music room, it's just
Yes.
relocating.
Yeah, so it's not a new music room in terms of being, they have a second music room, but we thought it was a logical thing if we were going to be doing this work to put that out back there and then have the, move the noisy activity out of the middle of the school, put it there. But we don't have to do that. We could just add 4 small group rooms out the back.
Thank you.
Or, 4 more. So, yeah, about a little over 3 million.
Yeah, and then are those near the music room, is that the 2 staff restrooms, the additional
Yes.
bathrooms back in that corner?
Yeah. Any place where you see a T on there, yeah, there's a couple right down there. So, then, let's see. Okay, the East Middle School. So now we're starting to get into some of the bigger dollars, really, and actually, in some respects, almost the middle schools are kind of one of the big impetuses for this whole thing. Because in the process, as we grew our, in 2007, our middle schools were at about, I'm just ballparking at 850 students. They had been as high as 1,200 in the early 2000s, and then actually, in West Middle School, actually been in the 80s. They were built in the 60s, and so they're utilized, but then in the 80s, for a period of time, the West Middle School was closed and leased out. And, but it was reopened, and, but they're at about 800 students each, 850 students each, and now they're a little bit over 1,300 each, or at approximately 1,300. As this grew, though, in the program being different from when they originally built in 1964, we moved the swim program here from West Middle School because we wanted to build the community wanted us to build a larger pool. We built a larger pool, a fast pool. Someday, if I have more time, I'll tell you what a fast pool is. But we built a fast pool, and so if you do go there, you'll see that once they moved in there, they started putting pennants on the wall again. But we added that, which was really not a capacity increase to the building for students. But as the students grew, the only thing that we did in terms of additional classrooms was added 5 classrooms on the southwest corner of East Middle School, and you'll see them, 5 classrooms on the northwest corner. Those were the only additions to the building related to the open enrollment growth. So they did have extra space in the building, but they're pretty tight right now. So at East Middle School, and it was our first meeting, and actually West was our second one. But increasing staff restrooms, everybody wants and requires small group spaces for good reasons. In the process of growing these buildings, instead of adding science rooms, we ended up converting. Part of it was the fact that we were doing this without doing a bond referendum, so we had to use dollars as efficiently as possible, and it was less dollars to convert some existing rooms into science classrooms that had not been purpose-built, rather than building them at the time, because that's what we could afford to do with kind of managing, our bonding capacity. That's not, that was internal to our existing resources. So, but purpose-built science classrooms would be a valuable item. And then the gymnasium for a fourth physical education station. The fourth physical education station right now is actually in the storage room for the double gyms in the lower level. And it's really tight. So this would basically do that. And then a performance space they asked for. So now in looking at that, we're going to go through a couple things on the performance space, but so we looked at the plumbing locations, of course, for the restrooms, site access for construction. The big thing with site access, well, I'll just go through this list first. The school impact, by construction, staging of materials, stormwater retention pond, where do you put that? Because here the water table's really high on the west side. A lot of that used to be swamp that was also filled in back in '64 when you could still do that. And we have the whole issue of parent drop-off and pickup and bus corral congestion with everything coming in that one main driveway. So it still is a tight site, but what we looked at is, one of the first things was move the buses out of the current bus corral and convert, we'd gained 46 additional parking spots, and then actually 92 parking spots for evening and event activities, and change the student entrance to an entrance on the west side. Along with that, we would put 4 science rooms, and then we would convert the existing rooms that had been converted to science rooms back to other uses, which you'll see on another slide. And then we looked at performance spaces, and what's Lene's last name? Lene Schoen works for Wold, and we came up with the concept of doing a combination to be able, rather than an auditorium, which is also very expensive. This is the second cut, but most middle schools that are being built new, they typically will have a performance space off of gymnasium, so a performance venue. So, it's listed out here as stage. I prefer the term performance venue because it is. And we got some slides to show you on that. So, and then in the process of that, if we constructed this, the gym and performance venue here, we'd be able to basically hollow out the west end and basically grab that whole thing for full-time cafeteria. So it would increase the cafeteria space that way at relatively low cost. The other thing is on this site, the idea of constructing these areas like this is you'd be able to stage off of the playfields, and all the construction activity would be kind of around the perimeter rather than right in the middle of, they're really good at MSP at building, between the runways and stuff like that, but we only have one runway. We, additional staff restrooms, and covering, that request. So we put a new student entrance in the back, and there also would be lockers in this area. This would be a wide enough thing that we'd be able to put all the lockers, and take the lockers out of the middle of the media center. Those were actually transferred in there a number of years ago. Principal Dimmitt was having issues with the growth and just student behavior and stuff, particularly in the 8th grade hallway. And so we moved basically the lockers out of that area and put them into the media center. So it'd be an opportunity to move that out. But there's a couple other things as we drill down here that I'll note related to that, because we have some small group space, but we also, because of building 4 science rooms, we also gain large group space. So there's a little bit better drawing, a little bit more recent drawing. And you can see the science rooms. We put a couple of restrooms, staff restrooms there, and staff restrooms there. So we'd actually more than double the staff restrooms. There would be student restrooms up around the gymnasium on the main level also. So lots of restrooms. And then we're showing 2 of the science rooms that would be converted back up in the middle there. And those will be converted to small group spaces. And it could be a lot of small group and a medium group. So we determine how to divide that up. It's a pretty big space. But then the other thing is, these are science rooms. These are pretty decent science rooms for the grade level there. So we would be keeping those. We propose to keep those. But these two rooms are currently science rooms, but they would be able to be repurposed. And what we propose to do there is we'd end up taking this function and putting it over here. But what that would do is it would, in essence, because all these rooms are actually available for, we take whatever functions in here, and, well, these two would be moving over here, so these two would be open. So, I mean, we wouldn't really have to move anything. But the bottom line is what we would do is we'd actually take, to get some larger group space, we would take out this wall, and we'd actually put new windows here and kind of make this be combined part of the media center, but a large group space. And there's this type of wall system called dirt walls. It's DIRTT, but it's just a, I don't know if they thought it was cool or what, but they are basically removable, so you can, open up a room and just kind of slide them out of the way. And so it'd be a situation where you'd have, basically these are 15, you got 3,000 square feet. Okay, so how big is 3,000 square feet? That is almost as big as the small gym at Deep Haven, where the cafeteria is. So you'd have that big space, but it also would be right off the media center. So if you needed something where it was even more space or a really big function or a night function, you just open everything up and all of a sudden you just got this whole space. And by knocking out the windows or knocking in some windows over here now and having these be clear glass kind of, you basically finally have, after 60 years, you actually have natural light coming into the center of the media center. So that is what we would do with all that. The gymnasium is a full high school court, and then the stage for concert and plays, it's a what's the width? Well, we have 750 seats in that thing. So what I need to do is actually just get out of this thing and pop into this real quick. Okay, do I have to close that down? Okay, I will. I'll just close that down and get to, oh, that's funny. Okay, I'll open it back up and I'll get back there. So these are drawings of what this performance venue and stage would look like. So high school court, and then there's rows of chairs, chair bleachers. So actually chairs with armrests. And then that's the size of the stage. So there's also stage right and stage left. So for middle school plays, there's ample space to have in front of the proscenium. The proscenium's that wide. But there's a lot of space to have stage right and stage left, and have people exiting and entering and doing all the things you do during plays. So this is what it would look like with all the seats down. You basically have 753 seats, which actually is plus 8 wheelchairs. So 761, which actually exceeds the seating of the Art Center. So these are all pull-out armchair bleachers and armchair seating, and then that's you have room to put chairs on the bottom or on the floor. Also for the principals to be able to pull in a class at a time or large groups of parents. So this is just an idea of, we would be adding up on the top, there's all the various lighting controls would be, you'd access them when the bleachers are pulled out, or the seating is pulled out. But there's a control set up on the top level there. You can see light bar, that would be, for lighting things up, and all the appropriate light bars and curtains and et cetera that you have on the stage. And then red is actually a large projection screen, 26 by 15, for all the events where people have to present data. So a much bigger space than they currently have now in the media center. So there's just a few pictures here. I'm just going to zip through these, but it kind of gives you an idea. So you see all the chairs pulled in, but there's enough space where you can pull a couple of rows out for community events, basketball or whatever. Still have enough seating on the sideline for the team, so you don't have people's legs sticking out. And again, just a couple different views. The stage actually would have be able to be completely closed off. So the reality is you could actually have basketball going on, while you have some other type of, whether it's some other type of practice going on the other side, whether it's music or acting classes or acting or practicing for the plays or whatever. It's kind of funny. I said, why do you have the sunlight showing in? Because we would probably put windows on the north side like we've done with all of our gyms, high up like that. But they said, well, we just put it in there to give depth. So we don't have a big bank of windows on the west side. But so you can kind of see this is a high-end, it's cloth seating. It's not plastic seating. So it's, very much like the chairs in the Art Center. I'm gonna zip through. You can see again another with the stage closed off. This is just to show you where lighting would be and what the angles are to be able to get lights on the performance venue. Another version of that. So this is kind of a side view with them pulled out, and there's the light person at the top waiting for their cue. So if you're up at the light area, this is at the light board and all that kind of stuff. There you are, right in front of the proscenium.
Just a comment. So did I hear you correctly that if this was new construction for a middle school, you would expect likely that this would be the kind of accommodation that would be
Yes.
available? I think that's a really compelling thing that the community will want to know if this gets up for consideration.
Yeah, I mean, right, that's what Lene told us. I mean, and ATS&R told us that too, because they built some new middle schools too, and they typically will do something like this.
Was there discussion with the arts or music staff that have been using the existing facilities about whether this would meet their needs or how this would improve the situation?
Not yet, we have not gone out, we're just showing this to you, but,
Okay.
We're going to be having additional conversations with everybody.
Okay, fair enough.
This is showing you with the screen down and, guest performer Robert Zimmerman ready to play on the front of the stage. And, just from the far corner, kind of what it would look like. And no, there's not going to be a skylight on top, although that would be cool. Yeah.
Does that open up in the summer?
Yeah. So, anyway, so it just kind of gives you an idea. And the thing is the big difference between, I left it on there. The big difference between this facility, doing the combination like this also, it's part of the chunk of what brought down, it would have been about $25 million for each of the, well, let me see here. Yeah, we're at 44 million for East, and we, in the initial cut, and now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back into the other presentation. So I got to open back up again. And then, all right, I'll just zip through here. Okay, so, yeah, the other thing is, this slide actually has a little bit of, it's called a vision platform chair. So, new combination of comfort and structural integrity. So, anyway, but it's a real chair, it's got real cloth, all that kind of stuff. So, and arms, side arms. So, anyway, and here's just, here's just kind of how the additions would look approximately. One of the first things we would have to do is build this bus corral, A, to try to get things out of the way, but B, underneath this bus corral, this is real expensive. It's almost $4 million or so because we have to raise it up about 10 feet so we can put an underground stormwater tank underneath that, take the stormwater runoff from that addition and that addition. And that way, that's how we can control it. And we keep the underground stormwater pond above the water table, which is only 2 or 3 feet below that low level. So it's pretty crazy. But anyway, so you see here, staff restrooms, small group spaces, performance gym, large group, about 16.6 million. That's about a $10 million difference between building that and adding a separate auditorium would be, a gym would be about 10 to 11 million, and then an auditorium would be about 20 to 25. So, let's see, what do we have it on here at? Yeah, it'd be about at East, it'd be about 17.9. Yeah, so we saved, a considerable amount of money between the two. That's how we got the dollar value of the whole thing down, because into a amount that's actually, in the range where we end up with a majority of people being able to afford, saying that they would support the bond payment, the tax. So, but about a $31.4 million investment overall, 25,600 square feet of new construction and 6,000 heavy renovation. So at West, sorry, go right ahead.
Questions on these?
Sorry, yep.
I actually have two questions on the slide before that one. Go back one more, sorry, I guess. Yeah, so, nope, go back one more, please. One more. There we go, okay. So that flex space, the orange one in the middle, could that potentially also be, like you mentioned, where it is like one big space, but with retractable walls between? So
Yeah.
that it could be used as a big group, or you could have it multiple small? 'Cause we had that at the school that I taught at, and it was like one of the most used rooms, because you could take multiple classes in, or you could pull the walls out
Yep.
and have,
Yep.
one class or half a class. And it was really useful.
So-
And then my second question is just to make sure that I'm looking at the map right. The buses now would be able to go straight into the corral. So they wouldn't have to go fight the cars from parents into that one single entrance anymore?
Oops. Sorry. Yes, so what happened is
Okay,
we would, right now, the buses come in here.
yeah,
And then they actually go down here, and right about here, they come out right there.
yeah,
And we would move the bus corral entry here. And actually, it's kind of hard to tell from this drawing, but this would be just a separate parking lot
Yeah.
for like staff. So you couldn't even go from here to here. But
Oh, okay.
The buses would come in, park here, and then they'd loop around and come back out.
okay,
And they would just use this entry. So, yeah, it's still gonna be busy, but not having the buses all going up here with all the
Yeah.
cars would be a huge traffic relief.
yeah, and I think that would address, I mean, that's one of the community concerns I hear the most, and we get messages about, is that east traffic congestion. So I think that would be another compelling thing for the community.
Well, the frustrating thing with this site is, we don't, a long time ago, we actually had an idea to try to like loop down behind the pool and come out all the way down on the southwest corner of the, but you're taking up a lot of the green space, but also you have to build on above the wetland. So you'd have to raise that whole thing up, so it'd be hugely expensive. And at that time, actually, it wasn't really something the city was even interested in. Yeah. But now they might be a little more interested. But anyway, but the point being is there's, absent something like that, there's not space to like really extend the car loop we actually, over time, we actually did. Vehicles used to just come in here and turn at the front right by the front of the building and load up and then go back out. And we extended it to the back, and we made, a third lane so we can at least stack double the cars on the inbound lane and then go out through, the current configuration. So that's what we could do with, making the best we can with what we had available. But, there's, whereas at West, they just have a bigger campus, and it's much more of it's usable, and we had the ability to really kind of get a circuitous route, so we have stacking space. Or like at Groveland, we were able to drive out around, convert the running track into running track / car stacking, and so get everybody off the road at least. It still's a long queue, but at least they're not on the road. So, so we're at about 31.4 million there.
Any more on East?
Okay, we press on. So Middle School West, similar. restrooms, small group, purpose-built science classrooms, gymnasiums for a fourth PE station, and performance space. So it's almost like Freya and Pete might have talked or something, I don't know. Or they had ESP and they just, same things, plumbing location, stormwater retention pond, but here it's a lot easier. It's high ground. We can just dump one of those things, or as many as we need, out underneath the parking lots, and we're good to go. So much less of a concern compared to East Middle School. So this is the latest configuration, and actually everybody says it's working pretty good. So the funny thing about it is I don't think you're there yet, David, but during Bus Driver Appreciation Day, one of the bus drivers, he said, "Hey, thanks for fixing MMW," and then everybody clapped. So I think you were there, Amy, right? So, the bus drivers appreciate it too. Anyway, so very similar, but here, we've got the water tower, and we got that easement, and we really can't put a gymnasium back there. Also, we have a huge stormwater, above-ground stormwater pond that's part of the whole stormwater thing, but bottom line is that gymnasium won't fit there and be out of the, kind of like the fall area of the water tower. So here what we're proposing to do is putting it adjacent to the cafeteria. Now they load up and unload back here. That's the car queue coming around. So we would push out with the same gym, same performance venue, but just push out a little bit, and then we'd have to realign this track. That's not that big of an expense, but relatively speaking. 4 science rooms, restrooms in the same approximate location, just back over. Here we'd actually, because the performance venue is right here, and there's no upper level like we could do at East where we had the restrooms for the, and at East, when this was on the back, it was really close to the restrooms that we built for the swimming pool. And so there's a ton of restrooms really close to that. Here we'd have to put some restrooms closer to the basketball court. But this is still be an improvement in the space and in the space available for lunch. So I'll just, so again, same kind of seats, same bleachers, just different places. So we would look at, now it's showing up. We look at doing the flex space, science rooms here, a couple of staff restrooms here, restrooms here for the gym and concert plays. Of course, and actually all these little white dots are actually restrooms, existing restrooms. We would do the same thing. Since we have 4 science areas, we basically, here it would be grabbing this space, but we look at grabbing both of these spaces and doing the same thing where we would knock windows into here and open this up and put the movable partitions in. On this situation, they have a different setup at this school, and so this is a full-time classroom, but we would put some flex space in this area, which is a pretty large space. It was converted just this year, to the science room. But we would end up with three. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, this is the other one that we would get claim back, but we'd keep these 2, and they would end up having all purpose-built science rooms. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is what they need. And let's see. So again, a little close up on the first floor. We try to put where we're already doing things. Also, in this situation, and actually over I forgot to mention, over at East, one of the science rooms has to be a storm shelter for that science room addition. So it would be built with thicker walls to comply with the code. And then, again, the same performance venue situation, same chairs. So it would be same capacity. And then this is kind of what it would look like with the 2 different additions. And we'd probably stage off of the track, and we might stage off of here on the backside just for this. Depends how we stage the actual building. But we might give them 2 staging areas if we have to. This back area is not used much. And we staged off the back before for a couple of things, for this other addition that we did back in 2013.
Before you go off of this, so are they losing, you know, the basketball courts that are kind of right by where the cars come in, the outdoor basketball courts? Are they losing those? Are they being relocated?
Well-
Because they seem like they're used fairly, like, a lot.
They would be losing those because of this gymnasium addition. So, could we put down a slab of asphalt somewhere for them elsewhere? Yeah. You know, we'd have to look at that, but, that'd be that's kind of more of a detail that we'd have to work through with this, you know, with the staff, as we actually, because if we actually do all this stuff, we're literally gonna be drawing on these things for months, and we're gonna sit down with each site, we would sit down with each site, with the principal, with the staff, impacted, all that kind of stuff, and go through everything and make sure that we have everything included. So, again, this is at, you know, the 15,000-foot level. But, yeah, this shows that those basketball courts aren't there, so we'd have to find a place to put them. Because, yeah, they actually even, over there, they have a Gaga pit. So. So the cost of this is, again, similar for restrooms, small group spaces. The large group space is actually relatively inexpensive. And then our science lab's about the same. The performance gym large group is a little more expensive because of the need for all the restrooms. And then remodeling, or, you know, kind of gutting out areas for the cafeteria expansion. So this is about $25.5 million. The big difference between west and east is not have to build a bus corral, since we just did it. Any other MMW? Okay, so now Minnetonka High School. It's amazing, but, you know, if you ask the staff, and it's like, hey, basic human needs, staff restrooms, to be able to get between classes when they need to. And Principal Erickson really would like to have student services area reconfigured to accommodate increased staff. They really like the loft. We won a national award for that. It's hanging out there in that little alcove. But they'd like more loft-style collaborative learning spaces. And actually, all of Vantage Momentum is pretty much built in loft style with classrooms and breakout spaces and stuff. They'd like more of that there if they could. Relocate the fitness center because they'd like to get the aviation program that they have there up there, the first level of aviation, which is really popular and a good thing. They'd like to relocate that to the fitness center and gain back use of the loft to be used as the loft. Activities, well, they would like to be able to, they have growing varsity programs, and so having another gymnasium for various practices, another general purpose gymnasium, more or less general purpose, for various varsity programs, but then also an additional PE station would be handy, especially on the really cold days where they're not going down to the dome, because they do use the dome for an additional PE station. And then the wrestling program, it's been in the basement since, well, for a long time. I'm probably from the beginning of the, almost the beginning of the school. I know part of the wrestling area is actually the old locker rooms from the original 1952 locker rooms. And so and the other issue there is they have a lot of padding around the posts, but if you're wrestling and you're throwing somebody and stuff, even if you get a lot of padding, if you hit that the wrong way, it's not really not good things can happen. So that's the reason for like wanting to look at trying to get them out of the basement. So in looking at this, doing site access, how we build things, school impact, where would we stage? Although we have the ability to stage on a lower lot for a lot of things, which is actually a good thing. Where can we put a stormwater retention pond on their parking lot? Very tight site. So, you know, I can't say it enough, but we have a 100-acre campus, but only 49 acres are actually usable because the rest of it's wetland. So, or protected trees. So, like west of the west parking lot, kind of down the right field line of Veterans Field. So we've got the second biggest high school in the state on probably one of the smallest campuses in the state. So, let's see. So one of the things is, there's not many, with the parking needs and all, there's not a lot of practical buildable areas like right on, because the simplest thing to do if we had a lot of land is we just build a big block of stuff like right attached to the main building. And so, but the thing is, in this situation, we're looking at where can we find space and not lose parking and make it fit. And so, yeah, one of the things that we're talking about is we're actually putting something into the hillside, because there's nothing on the hill, well, there's trees on the hillside now that we planted, but there's, it's like there's just no other space where we wouldn't lose, parking spots are golden for our campus. So anyway, so in looking at things, it's like, okay, how would this work? So we looked at coming up with, to get additional spaces in the building. Oh, we also, we have a cafeteria and kitchen area because our cafeteria is crowded. There's an addition proposed for that. And that would actually help with kind of the throughput. And, because even though they got multiple lunches, it's like they got a lot of kids, and our participation's way up, so everybody likes the food, so.
All three secondary sites.
Would gain?
Yes.
Yes. So we look at pushing out onto the patio back there. And we look at doing a structure, which I'll talk about a little bit more, that would actually move functions out of the gymnastics area, out of the weight training area, to be able to then put other functions in their place. So the way this is drawn up on the first floor, the council area renovation, 6,500 square feet, that's a pretty simple thing. If we end up getting too squeezed, we can always push that one wall out a little bit into the courtyard. But the courtyard is a nice addition there, and actually in good weather, there's a lot of kids out there. So now the existing gymnastics gym, it had been a basketball, a multi-purpose gym. They converted it for the gymnastics program. But the idea would be to move the gymnastics to another gymnasium and that we would construct, and then convert volleyball, basketball, badminton, the type of things that would use all those gyms. Just convert that gym back into a multi-purpose gym. Cafeteria, again, seating and serving addition. And those are really the three things on the lower level, although that little orange or beige area is actually costume storage, and we have, one of the things that the arts program asked for was more costume storage. And over the years, we've done nooks and crannies. We grabbed some space one year during a construction project where there was this really tall space, and it was just a one-story set of clothes racks. And what we did is we bought some scaffolding that we put on the inside, that you can make a deck out of above them. And then we actually built a stairway from one of the dressing rooms into it to get a second floor of clothes racks. So we've been, trying to get additional storage space for that wherever we can. And they also have the space underneath the stage, which is pretty interesting. So we've got a way to, if wrestling moves out, there's a way to get expanded storage for the performance venue. So, again, we would regain PE station and multipurpose gym in the building. We'd add single-use restroom on the first floor, and relocate and expand costume storage. We look at moving at renovating the lower level, part of the lower level. It used to actually be a cardio system, or cardio stations. They moved it up into this thing when we constructed this. We would be basically moving it back down, but Jeff will tell you that, Principal Erickson will tell you that it's one of the more lightly used areas. It's not really functioning, at anything close to full capacity. So it's very valuable. It's 4,500 square feet. So, when we actually in that area, we were looking for more space, and I called it the pork chop, and we actually had a drawing that was that showed a three-foot or three-story tower on there. You get 13,500 square feet to possibly put like Vantage or in there at the time when it was growing. But then another idea came through to make it cardio to help for athletics, and so that was what was chosen to do. Cafeteria addition, we just basically push out and add another serving line, so pretty significant space. So now on the upper level at the main building, it's staff restrooms, but then we would look at moving the weight training from the second floor of Pago out to the gym building, the triple gym building, and we would build a connection through the second floor and convert that into additional loft-style space. So it would gain that loft space, but it would also then connect the two buildings for, like, from a security standpoint. Everything is now one building, one security piece, and people don't, they can still walk outside. But bottom line is there's a little bit of a security piece and a bad weather type of situation. If people are trying to get to Momentum Auto Shop or the Momentum trades classes and things like that in that area also. So this shows kind of like, or that's just a close-up of all that. And then at the lower level, we look at existing wrestling space primarily used for theater storage. And the area to the right of that formerly was, and there's actually space in there that we could just move the existing equipment down into that current space and just kind of renovate that if we determined we wanted to do that, provided it would be, used more than it currently is. But that's how we would handle the physical, the cardio piece of it. So, I also they do the yoga classes in that room a lot. So, and then just a close-up of that. So they gain a lot of, and it's right close to the elevator off the main, at the main, what you call it, atrium. So how do we address the relocated functions? Second loft, the additional PE and multi-purpose gym addition, five-fold increase in costume storage, but then need to retain our parking space as much as possible, but there's just not that much land left on this campus right now. So the solution that we came up with was what we call a triple gym building. So we'd have a weight gym, which would be larger than the current one, have a wrestling gym, move them up into so they would have a full set of mats like you'd want to be able to practice with, and then a gymnastics gym. But what we would do is we'd stack them one on top of the other because we don't have the space to just tack them onto the existing, we lose all the parking, and we don't have the space to spread them all out in one story. So we do like they do in New York. It's like you go up, like Madison Square Garden, the hockey rink is on and the basketball court is on the 8th floor. So we would stack them all up, and but it's kind of like a walkout Rambler home. If you're on the lower level down by the visitor side of Einer Anderson, you could actually go into the building from the ground floor. So, so it'd be 3 levels. Up on the upper level would be a gymnastics gym and actually would have more space than what they have, so they could actually be able to have seating for 120. Right now, we squeezed in a few bleachers in the standing room only. Wrestling gym, ideally you have 2 mats and a bunch of small wrestling spaces off to the side, and then some either weights or cardio. And then the lower level is the weight gym. So the green area is the current area that they occupy, so you can see there's a significant gain in space for weight training for all of the varsity sports. I know there's a lot of classes that are during the summer and all that. So, but that would be for everybody, but also, they would have, if they're going to use that, like they do now, they have to walk across to Pago. Well, they would walk across to here to use it. But the other advantage then also is it's not a big thing, but it's a nice safety feature from the standpoint of when the dome is up, the blue dots are actually the doors. So you could walk in at the upper level, take the stairs or the elevator down, walk out at the lower level, and just walk over to the dome. So you don't have to go down those, the Eiger sanctioned stairs, kind of rappel down to get to the dome. So yeah, we squeezed that on there, and it's kind of goofy, but that hillside doesn't look that big, but you can actually fit this space on there. But the other thing is we'd have concession stands for, and real restrooms for Veterans Field. They would basically access those off of the plaza. So there's a benefit to that whole facility also. So again, this slide has all the comparisons in terms of existing space versus what the new space would
Just to
be.
be clear, we currently have a gymnastics gym, a wrestling gym. All of those currently exist, they're just
Yes.
we're not building new space for gymnastics gym, wrestling. Weight gym, it don't already. This isn't, we like to have these things so they're on.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Or-
Just clarifying generally for the public, we have 40 to 70-year-old spaces that function. Wrestling gym is 70 years old,
Yes.
so we're moving it up to make it new. We're not building it, relocating.
We're relocating something, but we are putting some square footage for it to do that. And then we're converting the old spaces or the existing spaces to other uses. In two cases, educational space, and in one case, educational space. Well, actually, the gymnastics gym has become another PE gym, so it's an instructional space also, and then also accommodate the existing, like the new girls badminton, new boys volleyball. So we've been growing the varsity options, and then the kind of the really not great conditions for wrestling would basically be converted into storage, but it's a big need in that regard, or a request. So, yes. Sorry.
This is done. The top level of that gym, how high would it be compared to like Veterans Field? Can we put level 4 skybox and let Diamond Club rent it out?
Oops,
And generate a little revenue?
yeah, okay, this is probably the best way to look at it. So here's what things will look like. I just jumped ahead a few slides. So the cafeteria addition, and the sky, little mini skyway to connect. But then, the way this works, it's, the gymnastics on top, so it's a tall space because you get the parallel bars and all that kind of stuff. So it's a relatively tall space. But you would walk in to that, and you basically would go up a little bit to, you'd go up, there's an elevator that'll go up to like 4 or 5 feet. So it's a little bit above, just slightly above the parking lot level. And then the other 2 levels actually have windows to the outside, but they also have windows, all 3 of them have windows to the south, So basically, when you come in the parking lot, it looks like, oh, there's just a 1-story building. When you go down here, it's like, oh, it's a 3-story building. Because the triple gyms are stacked on top of each other. So, they would have to be baseball, fall ball proof, yes, or we've actually talked about that. You can get hurricane impact resistant, but also, or worst case, we could put like a light screen in front of them. So, yeah, absolutely, because, baseball players do what baseball players do. So hopefully they straighten them out and they're hitting them over the fence, right, to score. Anyway, so that's kind of what they look like. Again, this is kind of how it would work. Mechanical room, restrooms on each floor, some training and storage. There's locker rooms here for the wrestlers. Gymnastics, they have an office. If we might have to change that and make that be changing rooms, although a lot of them come like ready to go. So, but anyway, this is just still, again, it's conceptual, so we'd be working through all the details and fine tuning everything to make sure that these things are configured the way everybody needs to. But you kind of see from the blue how you could come in, take the elevator, which is the red dot, or walk down the stairs and walk out at the bottom to get over to the dome. So,
From this, so parking obviously is a huge thing, and does it fit in the space and not really consuming any parking, or how much parking would you
we're probably going to lose 6 to 8 spots on that one side, right here. Because we've got to stay like off of this driveway. That's the crane to the dome comes down there, that's the main access, we really can't move it one way or the other. And so we might, although if we look at reconfiguring a few things, we might be able to do some parallel spots along the building, so we might be able to reduce it to like, we lose 3 or 4. So it's a way to get some parking on, you know, or not really minimize the amount of parking that, you know, because if we built this out in the middle, you know, we lose 200 parking spots.
Yeah, that's part of my point is, I mean, to get that type of space with losing 6 or 8 spots at the high school, I mean, all the spots are coveted, but that's incredible.
Yeah, Dave Barone and I were walking around the campus, and we were looking at, you know, where we do this stuff if we had to relocate. We looked at like, could you add on to the back to the, because you know, if you see the stadium at Notre Dame, they have all these gyms and things like that added on around the stadium because they had, and we were going, you know, can we add on to this? You know, I was telling, you know, let's look at the east side, and could we relocate the tennis courts or whatever? And we were walking around, and then we were like, it's just not going to work. And we were walking out and going, Dave, what if we like built the walkout ramp and tried to sink it into the hillside? And he goes, well, I don't know. And we started measuring it, and it's like, well, it could work. And so we started drawing it up, and it would fit, you know. So if we decide to do that, it will fit with minimal impact on parking.
Okay.
So, yeah, went through that in terms of where they are. So these are the costs. The triple gym building's the biggest cost, but the reconfiguring of student services, and then the loft style area, reconfiguring that and building the connection, about 3.2 million, because it's all reconfigured. And we end up with a loft 2.0 that's almost as big, not quite, but almost as big as the original loft. So, you know, it's a considerable gain of that space. And then also, if they're able to get aviation down into the current cardio area, they gain their loft back too. So that's, you know, they're basically gaining, you know, the equivalent of like 15 classrooms back and about a dozen small group rooms, you know. So it's a significant amount of space that they don't have access to for instruction that they then would. So, and it's interesting because, you know, the thing is in the loft style area where you can have classrooms, but then collaborative areas and small group areas, more and more the high school in particular, but even you hear it at the middle school and stuff, that they're kind of switching to that type of instruction. So all these things, you know, just kind of add to the ability to do that. But there's 40,000 square feet of new construction, and 14,600 of heavy renovation. So those are the total K-12 projects. If you add them all up, it's about $132 million. So it's pretty incredible. If you took all the things that we've done and you actually, since 2007 related to open enrollment and including VANMO, and you put it in current year dollars, it'd be about $132 million. So it's a lot. I mean, but it's a significant investment, and we haven't done anything for 30 years. But again, it's a big, big decision. The other thing is, but the total potential bond issue is, we have $7 million in there for the EPIC classroom security system. The big thing with this system is it gives access to and support to every classroom for student issues. I mean, would you say that, David? I mean, if you want to expound on that a little bit.
The two big things about this are, we have some classroom audio in select classrooms across our district, but not in all of them. And it would give every teacher the chance to have their voice amplified to every student in the room, which is a big advantage. Right now at the high school, we're moving, when we have students that have hearing issues, we're moving portable things around. But in the classrooms where we have it, student engagement's higher. Nothing is more important than hearing your teacher speak. But what this does is give every teacher the ability to have a safety concern in their classroom and immediately communicate it without notifying students in their classroom, or they might see something. It's state-of-the-art building security for school systems with the added bonus of an amazing way to engage students. We're ready to upgrade some of this. I think the $7 million bid might be on the high end. I think we can be less than that. Is Scott Gerlicher is working with this company on the security part, but we could improve the teachers' confidence in classroom security as well as building security in every classroom in the district. And that's important because our parents talk about school safety.
You know, and all of our buildings, we upgraded. When I came here, we had really old building PA systems, and things were just coming into play, if you remember, like around 2000 and into early 2000s, but related to, warning systems for intruders and lockouts and all that kind of stuff. And so we have all that, but we have like a first generation of it, and that stuff is all, 12 to 15 years old, so it does need to be upgraded or replaced. And this actually is like taking a 737 and turning it into a supersonic jet. So.
On that front, is there any chance to squeeze that funding out of our tech levy and not have to go out for it? Or is that all spoken for?
We would have to bond, technically you can bond out of the tech levy, we would have to bond for it. The tech levy has some tech levy is actually tight. And there's some big requests coming up related to rebuilding the network that needs to be upgraded. But also we have the Classroom of the Future coming out of that. And those are two really big initiatives. So the thing is, but could this be taken out of here and then you wait a while or something, or do it like school by school? This would allow us to basically do it kind of within, in a relatively short time frame. So now we'll get into the potential bond issue. So instead of 193 million, we're looking at 142 million in theory, depending on if that's what we would move ahead on. So we have to plan for if we do it all or not. If we do less, it's different, as you mentioned, like you pull something out, which is all good. But this is just, okay, this is the whole, the whole 9 yards, whole full meal deal. So one of the things I just always put in here is about 90% of our tax base levies are supported by residential properties. We don't have a United Healthcare, or we don't have Super Value or Boston Scientific, production facility or anything like that in our district. So resident homestead is 71%. Resident non-homestead is 18%. So just about 90% is, and residential non-homestead is actually mainly, there's some people who have cabins on the lake or second homes on the lake, but then also it'd be snowbirds where they're here 5 years or 5 months and they're Arizona, Florida, wherever, so, but they pay no. Typically these people, if they're not, they're residential, but it's not homestead, it's not their primary domicile, they're not voters. Because they're residents elsewhere. But those are the two chunks that carry most of the freight. So what we came up with in trying to be, if we did, I talked about if we did $142 million all at one time, like just a standard 20-year note at current 4.4% interest rates, the levy would jump about 16% in one fell swoop. And that's before we know what the legislature is going to do, especially since they're having funding shortfalls, right? And, or structural deficits are calling it now. And so we don't know what's going to happen or if they're going to shift things onto the levy like they did in 2008, 2009, all that kind of stuff. So trying to make this a smaller chunk, not that dissimilar to kind of like what we did with the two-step or referendum where we took what would have been a 20% increase and knocked it into an 8% and an 8% 3 years later. But very similar to that. So to make this somewhat a much smaller, bite to swallow, come up with a strategy. It's a little bit of financial jiu-jitsu, but it actually would take 5 bond issues over four Januaries, in theory, if we ran a referendum in November it passed. The first thing we would do, and we'd also stretch out the construction, because you can't build all this in 12 months. It's going to take the better part of 3 years to put all this in place. We all saw how long the Vantage Momentum building took, so we'll have multiple projects at the same time, obviously, but we won't have every single one of these going on at the same time. So the first thing we do is issue something called bond anticipation note. Oh, the other thing is, 10 is our existing general obligation debt service. So it's relatively flat, but it reaches this waterfall where it starts declining out at about 10 years out. And so the idea is to try to, if you look at kind of stretching out the cost of this over several generations, because if these improvements are built, they're going to last 70, 80, 90, 100 years. So it makes sense. This is what utility companies do. It's like they stretch out their capital costs of a new power plant rather than socking the ratepayers, right up front. And so you look at stretching it out, and then over time, the generations pay for it. So this is over 30 years, so there'd be at least 2 generations, or maybe parts of 3, that would pay for this over time, of people living in the district and taking advantage of the facilities that were created. But we got to get to that waterfall. So one of the first things we do is we would look at doing a $29.6 million tranche of a bond anticipation note. So that's basically construction financing to get us going. Then we would issue $74.6 million worth of a bond, a regular bond that would go out till 2055, and we'd have a larger chunk. But the increase would be about $4 million, and it'd be about a 7% increase. I got another slide that shows that. So that would be the second one. Then the next year, we'd issue the gray, which is $29.3 million, and that kind of layers in on top. And then the little orange or gold or whatever, that actually is the the paying off of the short-term bond anticipation note and layering it out till 2055. And then the last one also then is at the same time as the orange, or as the gold, we'd also do the 25.9, that's the last new construction bond, and that would be laid out till 2055. So we would be issuing, have payments from 2027 to 2055, which is basically 29 years. And the maximum you could do is 30 years for general obligation debt. What that translates into to the taxpayer is this slide. So this is a really important slide. The average, the median home value is approximately $500,000. So the tax impact of $142 million on a $500,000 home would be $9 a month, 9.08, or $109 a year, $108.96. For we just highlight the $772,000. That's actually the $772,000 level, which is, there's a significant number that kind of fall in that chunk. It's above the median home price, but there's a significant number above $500,000 that falls there. It'd be about $15 a month, $183. But you can see from this chart, that would be the estimate of the impact of all those bond issues. So the first impact would be $9, but then it would stay there. And then, I'm going to go back again. It would stay there. It'd stay at that level for 10 years, and then it would start dropping off. The other thing about the structure is it leaves some room, because you're still going to have to do long-term maintenance over all these years. But long-term maintenance, and you're going to see that when I bring the next one forward, it's going to start dropping off a lot, because a lot of the big stuff that was done in the 50s and 60s, and even stuff in the 80s, we're kind of coming to the end of replacing all that stuff. And so it's like, there's going to be a lot of years in the next couple of decades where you're doing roofing and paving. And I mean, there's a few other things in there that might, but it's going to be way less than what we've been doing over the last 15 years. Because all that kind of once every 4 or 5 decades stuff is basically completed. So that, and again, residential homestead, if you see the seasonal residential, or, that's the non-residential, it's very similar to the $9.11 versus $9.08. So very similar down here to up there for the 90% of the property value. So how does that work with, this is a cut and paste from the survey that Peter Leatherman did for us. And when we asked on the survey from July, or June and July, if you see on this survey, we asked, okay, how much would you be, it's called tax tolerance is the way Peter calls it. So I'm going to work from the bottom up. 3% said they pay over $35 a month, after going through and hearing, like, here's some of the things we're considering. Another 5% said there's $28 a month. 16% for $21 a month, 22% at $14 a month. And $7 a month, 23%. Well, $9 a month is not exactly, if you take $9 a month is 5/7 of the way between 14 and 7, because between that area there's kind of there's a bell curve, right? Some people would say, oh, I pay 13, I pay 12, I pay 11, I pay 10, I pay 9. So if you pay 9, you pay more, right? I take that back. If you're saying you pay 9, everybody above that, if they're saying, hey, I'll pay $35 a month, you assume that it's a logical assumption that they'll say, okay, well, it's $9 a month, I'll pay that, right? So you add them all up. And the important thing about that is, so if you add all those up, it comes out to 65% would say they would pay at least $9 a month or more. And Peter Leatherman told us, he says, you need to try to get to a level of support at that level, because when it starts getting debated in the community, it'll probably deteriorate. The actual support might slip down. It will slip down under 60 into the 50s. And you don't want to get too close to 50. So you need to have a cushion in terms of what the public is thinking. And so that's just how that's calculated. So 65% of the survey respondents at that time were willing to pay $9 or more per month. So this is the average home value survey respondents. The big nugget here is, if kind of doing the same thing, it's like, okay, people, in terms of home value, 56% of the survey respondents, if we actually issue that layer of debt at the estimated dollar amounts, or in the estimated rates, and what we did is we calculate the rates and add 25 basis points as a cushion, so hopefully it's conservative. But the way that all plays out is 56% of the people that were surveyed about what type of home do you have, what's your home value, all that, 56% of the people are at $9 a month or less, but 56% of the people will pay $9 a month or less. So people who are saying, hey, we'll pay 7 or 6 or 5, there's a good chance that they might, be in favor also. But they're actually going to be paying $9 or less per month. So that's another good way to just kind of gauge, how does it work on the lay of the land in terms of the value of homeowners. So bottom line is, again, over half the people will pay $9 or less per month. So, and then it's just a comparison to neighboring districts. And what I did is I put in the neighboring district and then what the enrollment is off their last enrollment reports. And so you can see, like, right now, we're at $177 million of outstanding bonds. About 17 million of that is actually OPEB bonds. And then there's about 25 million that's going to be paid out of operating capital, which is something we levy and get state aid for. And so, but you take off about 41 million, we're at about 130 million, that's other bonding that's on the levy. So OSSIO just passed a $225 million bond issue recently. But you can see some other, that's kind of the range where other districts are. Shakopee used to be much higher, and actually Wayzata was higher, but they've been paying some off. But they had a lot of large bond issues a number of years ago, so they've been chipping away at them. They haven't done another bond issue for a while, or although much more recent than ours. But this is, I just circled this. The first year, the tax impact is, or the actual levy would increase $4,877,000. So how much of an increase is that on the overall, just on the gross levy? Our current levy is 70,163,000, and so if a layer of 4.847 million on top of that is about a 6.9% increase. So now we don't know again what the legislature is going to do, but in trying to make this something that is manageable, respectable, and trying to minimize it, it's about a 7% increase rather than doing, if you did the flat one, you'd be at about a 16% increase in one big jump. But also, you're able to maintain that going forward. So here's what the debt service on that would look like. So our outstanding bonds are in tan. I tried to get the colors to sort of match up. I put in there Moody's, because I just have to let you know about this. It's my responsibility to let you know. This is a clip out of our last bond rating, and it's been in our bond rating since we got a AAA rating, because they always say, are there any factors where you could get a higher? Well, at AAA, you can't get a higher. But there's always factors that say, well, this is what you could downgrade. And these have been consistent. We will have, in April, we'll have reached, we originally got our AAA bond rating in April of 2010. And so in April, we'll have had it for 15 years. If we will be increasing our outstanding general obligation bond debt if this is approved, and that's fine, because one of the things they have in there is negative enrollment trend that impacts revenue, or material increase in long-term liabilities ratio, which this is what it would do, because that's, but at the same time, so how far, if you get a downgrade because we have a higher amount of outstanding debt compared to other AAA districts, the lowest we would go down to is, there's a 23-step scale that Moody's has. AAA is the highest. AA1 is the second highest. AA2 is the third highest. And that's the lowest that we would go. So we go from 23 to 22 to 21 on a 23-step scale. So still very good credit risk. The net impact is your bonds are 5 to 10 basis points higher than they would be if you were at AA1 or AAA. But I just want to let you know that, because you should know that. And then on the side is the current 10-year long-term maintenance plan. I talked about how it's going to be dropping off to almost all roofing and paving, and I'm still working on kind of modifying that. But the district's always going to have some of that to do. But like I said, a lot of the really big stuff almost all the big stuff is gone. In that 10-year plan, I got replacing the ice arena out in the late 2030s, the ice arena ice making system. But, and there's a cooling tower replacement, but all that's included and then the rest of it's almost all like roofing and paving. And so here is what we call this is how we a tentative construction schedule. So again, those bonds on that chart, we'd issue a $26 million dollars worth of bonds in the. So what am I doing here? Okay, yeah, we would issue to cover the construction that would happen, or any architect firm work. We would need about $23.5 million and a chunk for the EPIC system. So we need about $26 million. So we would be drawing down $26 million out of the bonds that were issued in January of 26. We would need about $76 million over that time. And in January 28 to December 28, about $33 million. And then the last projects will be done, about $7 million of that would be done in that last year. So you're looking at construction, design and construction lasting from really, December of 2023, 2026 until really just to the start of school in the fall of 2029. But this assumes that the first projects that we really go after are the middle school ones, and then the high school one, and we hit the elementary ones kind of on that sliding scale. But they're all under construction. In 27, they're all going to be in various phases of construction. Although the last thing would be the loft, and so that's all just tentative. So I mentioned that so that's kind of the main piece of it, and I'm going to go quickly through projects for future considerations, needs developed, that were part of the big list of the 193 million. Well, how do we handle those? The TSP building, which is actually at the state, it's the Minnetonka Education Center, the official name, because we can't call it the TSP building at the state. But that is something that we could look at as needs develop. It'd be very easy to turn it into more loft-style learning with small classrooms and small groups. If we need additional momentum strands, additional vantage strands, or if aviation grows and there's more space, there's an opportunity there to do an addition, but that's something that we'd be able to finance out of other resources as we move ahead, or potentially out of project savings if we come in under budget. The ECFE building, we still have the parking deck on here, but the primary thing there is a two-story addition for additional ECFE classrooms to kind of help prime the pump of continuing to get students here. And that is something that they could probably fund out of their fund balance again, like we did a few years ago. They finished last year with a fund balance in excess of $5 million, and they are on pace to basically finish with at least $7 million this year. They're still operating at a surplus, which is great. And that model was put in place by Tim Litvin, and Kim Carlson is continuing it on, so there's no reason to think that they wouldn't have the resources to plow back into the building. Two-story addition there, right out the front. And then, I got these out of order, but anyway, so the Minnetonka Education Center, that's how it kind of looks from the aerial view. So the other thing is we've left space. These weren't part of the recommendations, but just so you know that there's a couple ways we could squeeze a few more loft-style additions or science additions onto the building if you needed it. One story, 2,400 square foot, kind of tucked in the by the northwest corner of the gym, of the west gym. And then it's one story proposal because that way it doesn't cut off all the windows of the loft. And then a two-story at the science silo, that could be science, it could be loft, it could be just about anything. But there's some additional space available there. So those things, total about $21.1 million that we would, as needs develop, those are smaller chunks that might be able to be funded out of other types of funding mechanisms, or depending on, refinancing opportunities and all that. If interest rates come down, we have 13 bonds that are actually ready to be refinanced and restructured to both get a lower interest rate and a lower payment, which would free up dollars to be able to do some of these things if we wanted to do them. So that's 87 slides, sorry.
Wow.
But it's a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a question.
We do have some questions.
Yes. At what point in the process might we understand what the operating costs are for the additional spaces or the renovated spaces?
We will be putting that together if we decide to do review and comment. We'll start pulling that together, but we will be adding custodians for a lot of these spaces. We currently have, right now, all utilities, we spend about $1.25 between electrical and gas and water. So, if you look at it, there's 140,000 square feet of new construction. That's going to be pushing $175,000 a year just for that. We haven't really nailed down like how many custodians we'd have to add, but you can see most, at some of the smaller additions, we might not have to add, but most of the elementaries and at the middle schools, we'd have to add a couple. And then at the high school with the separate building and all that, we would have to add. So there'll be additional custodial costs.
And insurance, presumably?
Yeah, insurance, this would add 140,000 square feet, and we currently have 1,879,000 approximately. So our insurance that we have covered would be, what is that, about 8%? So insurance would increase about 8%.
Okay.
And our premium is currently about $430,000, so it'd be another 35,000, 40,000. So that's just ballparking it, but yeah, and we actually have to put all that together in detail and bring it to you. If you say, hey, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. I always say if. We would put all it together in detail, and into the review and comment document, because you have to approve that review and comment, you have to approve us submitting that to the Department of Education, and then they'll accept it. So, and they do that on purpose, because they don't want school districts just submitting stuff willy-nilly, and they go through all the work, and it's like, oh, the board never approved this. You know, so we would put all that together in extreme detail. A lot of this stuff would be in there, but all that kind of stuff would go in there, and you'd approve it, we'd go over it with you, and it'd go to the board, to the Department of Education, and they have 90 days to turn around to say, you know, yes. If they say, yes, this is reasonable, then a potential bond-ish referendum would need a 50% approval, 1 over 50%. If they say no, you can still run it, but you need 1 over 60% approval. So it raises the bar. But anyway, that would be the next steps if or when or ever we would move ahead.
Thank you.
And there's a deadline.
Superintendent.
Yeah, there's, I mean, if you're going to run a November, okay, so we're talking in theory, if you're going to run a November election, you have to, they actually increase the number of days ahead of time that you have to call an election. And so it's 84 days, they just increased it from 74 to 84. So that's in early August. And so if you back up from early August saying, okay, we're calling the election, we're making a decision, we're going, and then we do all the stuff with getting the ballot ready and all that kind of stuff. But if you back up from there, you probably want some time to think about it. And so if you go, you'd probably want it back by at least June. So if you get it back in June, if you back up from there, 90 days before that, they have 90 days from the day we send it to them to get it back to us. So that means we would have to get it to them in early March to get it back in early June.
I think before we go into more questions, I'm wondering if you could give us a flavor of what the future discussions would be like if you've been for them. We have time, we can just keep going for a while here, but I wondered what the opportunities are.
So the progression, if you think about, you have 2 months as the shortest window of time to decide if you want the state to look at it, and you still to have time to decide for this fall. So you have 2 months. If within 2 months you feel like, I'm not sure there's any chance we'd want to decide by the fall, you can keep talking about it, submit it, and then there are other election window cycles. November is the most common, but this type of question could be asked any time of year.
Yeah, there's five official election days during the course of the year, like primary days, so you do have to hit one of those, if I remember correctly.
But
And I think one's in April, one's in
the progression of what we will do as a district, if you want to slow things down, we would, bring this back in March with more information. Our current progression is, it's public. We want our community to start seeing this and talking about it. We'll come back again in in February at a work session again to talk about operational costs and preparing to give this package to the state. But within the next 4 weeks, we would be encouraging the community members to be looking at the plans we've posted, and we'd be submitting a link, and we would summarize that in March to say, what are we hearing from our community about these plans? All of our employees have had the chance to give input. We would share that link with all of our employees to say, this is what your input yielded through the community task force, and we'd share that process. So we would be, over the next month, gathering lots of community and employee information to report again in March. And then come back and certainly talk publicly at the first meeting in March about the plans one more time, giving you a few more weeks to hear from the public after a public presentation. And then we'd formally, if the board was supportive, submit the review and comment. Now, all that would do would be to give you the option. That would be all of this. If between now and August, the board would say, you know what, we're going to be comfortable with $100,000 of this project. You could do that at that time, because we would have the review and comment as the entire package. We would have state approval Nothing says you have to do it all. So those are touch points. We are on time and on task for how this should run. Right now, we're just wanting to have lots of people look at it and give you feedback. Paul, is that anything I missed?
No, no. And, you know, and of course, we're going to get lots of feedback, and we'll probably get, hey, how about this, how about this? And so the reality is yes, we can do anything. If we do less, the property tax impact is lower, of course, and if we do more, the property and tax impact goes up. So.
Okay, more questions? Megan?
So I just find myself thinking, and I've been thinking for the last few weeks about what's going to be compelling to the community, right? Like, for that $9 a month, what are the things that they are going to be willing to put that money out for? And the two things I hear the most about are traffic and parking and lunch times. Like, my kid just doesn't have enough time to eat. So I think that, like, we do have some compelling things in there, right? I think the security with the Epic is really compelling. But as you were presenting, I was thinking MME, that bus corral, more parking for weekend events, so people aren't parking up on the grassy knoll and shimmying down to the pool, or getting that extra flow of cars coming off of Lake Street Extension, not having to fight the buses at the same time. Like, things like that I think are really compelling. I saw increased cafeteria space at both middle schools, the high school, Deep Haven. Did I miss any?
No, we can squeeze a little addition onto Scenic Heights.
Okay. Because I was just thinking about that piece of it, right? Is like, if families say, oh, like, you know, one of my issues has been my kid doesn't have time to get lunch and eat it, seeing that problem resolved is a compelling argument. And so I just have been trying to think about that and frame it from that point of view. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but I think the more we can address those kind of concerns that come up frequently when we're talking about this with the community, when we're talking about it with each other, making sure that we're addressing that we've heard that feedback and that we're, you know, trying to incorporate some of those things, I think will go a long way.
I failed to mention that we are currently taking everything you just saw and sending it out to a random group of about 1,000 community members, both parents and community members at large, saying, this is what we think we're going to do. Is this compelling to you? And so we also hit that 80% of our community members that aren't in our school, because they're also going to have to weigh in on that. When we come back in February, we'll also have that information to say, based on what our community thinks we need, is this worth an investment, and what's your threshold dollar amount too? So we'll be able to do a little bit of that work again also.
When does that go out?
It is happening next week.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, I agree with Megan's points. I also think it's also important to remember that the task force did a very thorough job of collecting feedback from staff in the buildings and the administrations in the buildings about what their needs are. And although I do think we want to talk about the things our community has told us, I, as a parent of a recent graduate, I'm not as familiar with what the needs are that staff have identified, like the issues with staff restrooms. It's not just we're not just prettying something up. This is a real issue for people who have to go from one side of the building to another just to use the restroom in their place of work. And similarly, like the small group space, it sounds very vague sometimes, but we're talking about things like places to actually provide services that we're currently providing in hallways and broom closets and things around. And I think those are the stories we need to remember that not everyone in our community has heard yet, and be able to talk to them about these needs are needs. This is a 30-year drought in upgrading our facilities that we've managed very well, thank you, Mr. Bourgeois, but we still have needs. And I think we need to talk about all of those. I took your thunder, though. Go ahead.
No. I want to piggyback off where Sally started, talking about the operating expenses, because that's just given the shape that our operating budget is in, the fact that we're, making reductions in expenditures right now and looking at this at the same time. I think the sooner we can forecast those impacts and see what that looks like as far as our operating budget goes and our reserve fund goes, the better, to help us make our decision. On that same side of the coin, I think it'd also be particularly helpful on the revenue side of the equation, building by building basis. Are we looking at increases in enrollment capacity? Should we choose to do something like that? Should the appetite exist for enrollment in the district? Is that, how do these additions help us on the revenue side of the equation, if we want to go that direction? So that's, I imagine, probably the easier thing to quantify. I think that the tougher thing to quantify that I'm sort of curious about, which is on the marketing and pitch to the community side of things, is like on a building by building basis, how many kids benefit from each of these things that we're doing? If it's a cafeteria, it's everybody. If we're opening up a couple gyms and creating more loft space and moving people out to another building for a lot of our athletic departments, that's going to be a substantial number of students. So I think that's being able to quantify the benefit and how many kids we're going to be able to impact in each site with these changes will be, I think, helpful to be able to speak to.
Chris?
Agree with everything. Very excited about the projects and really meeting the needs of the district. I think the board needs to very much consider, we're almost doubling our outstanding debt with this proposal. And we are blowing past to most of our neighboring districts when it comes to that. And I don't think we should take that very lightly. I do like the proposal. We're layering that in, so you're not really feeling that impact for 4 years. But this isn't, doubling your debt isn't the needs of our district. I mean, you're going to see that from our community. I'm all for it. But I think the board needs to seriously consider how we do that, because I don't think the community is going to see this as needs, even though they are legitimate needs. I think the task force has done a great job. It's not my personal view. I'm just putting it out there. It's something that we really need to consider. It's a big ask. It's something we haven't done for a long time. I think that helps us as well as in telling that story and marketing that. We haven't really done something like this in 30 years. We've went through this process. We included how many community members and how much feedback in the task force, and we brought all of that out there. So I think we have compelling things, but it's a big number. We're cutting operating costs from that standpoint. How does this, I think we have to weigh, how does this impact our ability to go back out to the community? Like I think Paul said it in the first slide of, we're going to be asking for operating funds just to keep operations going. It probably won't even be at the same level because it won't keep up with inflation. We know that it won't. And so we have these converging things, and we need to consider that. Are these really the things that need to be done today all at one time?
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I noticed the same thing. It looked like, it looked like our outstanding bonding debt peaked at around 275 million at one point, which would put us toward the top of that graph of our neighboring districts. And it'd be good to just get some data on, would we be an extreme outlier doing something like that? Or is that being successfully done elsewhere? And then how much of a financial razor's edge does that put us on, being able to pivot should macroeconomic forces, socioeconomic forces, change?
Well, on general obligation bonds, technically, I'm not advocating one way or the other, I'm just giving you the information. So there's a statute that allows us to bond up to 15% of the outstanding, or of the net tax capacity of the district. And the net tax capacity of the district in total is like $1 billion. It's a ridiculous number. Or over $1 billion, it's probably $1.5 billion. So we're never close to that limit. Any general obligation bonds that we issue will always be levied on the community regardless. So if there's a Great Depression, or if the stock market goes to 60,000, we still levy. So the debt is out there. If the community, and obviously that's why they have the community approve it, right? But the community approves it, the community pays it, regardless of, again, whether it's recession or an economic boom.
I want to follow up something I think I heard earlier from you, David, which I think is important. It sounds to me like, I can look at these projects and the costs and sort of say, all right, well, if we wanted to reduce our appetite, we could maybe pull something out of here or there, and I don't have any favorites that I wanted to do that to right now. But if we get through this process, we do our comment, notice and comment to the department. I think I heard you say, we still have the ability to say, nope, we don't have the appetite in our community for this, or at that point, could we just say, we're going to reduce that to 65% of what it is on what's been approved, and we're going to go forward with something more modest. Is that true? That's true. So we can.
Excuse me for the public, that's true. I have to turn on my mic. Yes, that's
Yeah,
true.
we can like à la carte it.
I mean, because it seems to me that if there's some advantages to the November 25 timeline, if we get comfortable that we know what we want to send out to our community. So I think continuing on the path that you've outlined makes some sense to me, but that also means we do need to continue this conversation in this room and outside this room so that we have a good sense of what the voters are going to want to really support.
And you could do a review and comment and wait a year, even if we hit this deadline. The only thing you're really gambling, and there could be some changing needs, costs are going to change.
Yep.
And so this is currently costed out to be built through 2029. If you wait 2 years, you're going to need to cost everything again because the things change.
Yep.
So you'll have a piece of information about starting as soon as possible. And there's a cost savings because the gyms that we built 7 years ago have doubled in price.
I have two thoughts. The feedback that we're soliciting that's going out next week, are we asking folks to kind of rank, like, these are the plans, like if you could choose your top 5, what would, because that might be kind of helpful if we got to a place where we were thinking like, we don't think we can run this whole thing. That would be nice kind of data to have, like where our community would prioritize things.
We can certainly do that in May or June.
Yeah,
Okay.
it feels early to do that without more of the information gathered and without more, I think more of our community needs to hear about these needs because I think without that, this whole project is dead in the water, Mike.
Yeah, I agree. And I just was curious if it was already in there. I wasn't necessarily thinking
No.
it should be already, but just going forward, I think that would be useful information to have. And then my second thought was, the other thing that we could get this already, and then if by some miracle the legislature said, hey, we're going to raise the roof on what you can ask for your community, that would probably impact our planning also. And we should probably have that information, at least by the time we're really having to make those decisions. So that would hopefully avoid that double ask situation just by, if we have that.
Knock on wood, the legislature should be done with its session before August.
Ideally, we would know our financial situation, and this is a funding cycle, and next year is typically not. So we would know the next biennium of funding, and our ability to ask or not, or your ability to do local optional revenue or not.
Chris?
I was going to add in my comments before, and you got got to it, so thank you. I'm all for continuing this process, and my guess is all of us will be, but you need some guidance, I think, from us, for all those reasons, because we don't have to go, but, we should do the work. So in case that everything lines up and we know our funding, we know what it's going to cost to our, we can always back it down or wait a year or all of those things, but you can't get that time back in order to do that work. I know it's asking the district to do a lot of work that we aren't 100% sure we're going to go, but that's part of the deal.
That's what we signed up for.
That's part of the deal. So, I mean, I would think that, at least coming out of this, from my standpoint, there's no reason to go with this. I think it's reasonable, a reasonable direction to go.
Yeah, I certainly encourage preserving options, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, it's been 30 years. If it takes us a few more months to figure it out, we ought to take that time. All right, anything else while we're all here?
We will gather in a lot of information and come back in the February work session with operational costs, another benchmark survey from the community, a summary of any feedback we received during that period of time, and then that still gives you another month before review and comment. And review and comment would be, what I'm not hearing you say is, push it back up to 190 and test all that. No. So we're at 142, we're in the right ballpark. We'll move forward with that. That gives Paul's work direction, clarity, and then we'll start gathering lots of information for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all good. Thank you.
I guess we're done for tonight. Thanks, everyone.